A few weeks back, I spoke to my friend Don Scime about being an actor and making your own work. Before I get into that, let's take a look at this less than 1 minute segment about Don. I want to talk to you about Don Scime. He's an actor and he shares his skills through educational programs. He's done a slew of theater and in the last decade has branched out into films. He believes in paying it forward, and that's one of the reasons why I want to have him on the show. But the other reason is that he makes his own work. He wants to act, so he goes out there and he writes and he shoots his own content. I mean, he obviously works for other people, but in between, he does his own thing. Don's going to come on to the show, talk about the craft of acting, pursuing it, paying your bills, not going crazy, and still having a life. You used to do a lot of theater, not that you don't do it anymore, but you've moved more towards film work. And I was wondering if you could talk about moving into that. What made you want to move into that? How did that process go? Like, obviously, you had stuff to learn, and then now you've moved further into just creating your own work yourself.
Well, one of the reasons that I knew that I wanted to move more into film and television work is because I knew that I wanted there to be sort of a more permanent record of my work, you know, and it just seemed a natural place to go. I work with an agent now, and a lot of the stuff that they'll submit me for is television and film, and I just think that's naturally, commercially, that's just where everything is going. But I think having that background in theater, doing a lot of theater, doing a lot of regional theater, I think it has helped me to understand what story is and to understand what structure is. And I mean, I definitely appreciate that background, and I think it's helped me as a storyteller in filmmaking as well.
And you said that you had written a play, but you took that play and you decided to turn it into a film. You felt it would work better as a film, but it would be great to talk about like the fact that you didn't, because when I first made a film, right, I just jumped in and made it, and I knew it was going to have problems and be, not maybe the best product, right? That's how some people go, but you chose a different route, which I think is great, and it's just different, where you went out and found people to do the directing and make it, and it's different because I'm not an actor. I'm not trying to be an actor, but you obviously want to be acting. So some people would just take on all the roles and be the star and try to do it all. And you didn't do that. And I think that's great. And I want to talk about what did you decide to do and how that goes.
I knew I couldn't do it all. I knew I couldn't direct it and give a really good performance. I knew that I just couldn't do that. And it's funny that you're talking about, because recently I've been working on a short film, which I showed you not too long ago, and I did do everything, but it's much, much smaller, and it's, and it's just me, and there's not a lot of things to deal with. This had a lot of different characters and a lot of different elements of moving back and forth in time, so I knew that I couldn't do it all. I had worked with a different director on helping me develop the script from a play into a screenplay for about a year. And then with my director, I had a long developmental process where we worked together for about 6 months. Just sort of making sure that we're have the same sort of like vision and on the same track and everything. And her name is April Winnie, and she's since gone on to direct a lot of television. She's really wonderful to work with.
You decided not to shoot in New York, right? You went and you shot in Buffalo, right? So talk about like that, because a lot of people think it's not true that you have to shoot in New York or LA, but people are making films everywhere around the world and everywhere across this country. So, talk about that. There's pros and cons, right?
Right. Well, the story took place in Buffalo, so I felt we had to shoot there. So there was a little bit of sort of problems with that, because all of our crew, at least like 90% of our crew, did come from New York City, and all the major actors came from New York City as well. So the casting process was in New York City. The hiring process of all the crew was in New York City. So there was a period where my director, who came from LA, she came to New York, and we did all the hiring here in New York. And actually, she hired a lot of the people. It was all, she hired the people that she wanted to. And I really trusted her. I got to the point where I really trusted her in the developmental process, even before we started shooting. And that was really great, just to have the talk back and forth, and just to be able to focus on my performance, because I knew that, like I said, there's no way that I would have been able to do all those things on my own. Just no way.
And you made a great choice, right? This film played over 50 film festivals, right? You started out as an actor who had never written a screenplay or written one that was going to be made, right? And, obviously we all dabble into all kinds of things, but to really go forward with it. And that is a huge success in itself. We talked about this, we've talked about this over dinner, but, the fact that, like, look, you go to a film festival, it's not going to make your life, but it is a huge achievement. And to really play everywhere and find your niche for your film, is incredible. And so congratulations on that. I think that's a huge accomplishment. And I was talking to Stavrula Tosca earlier today. She's a producer and developer and pitcher, and she also obviously makes her own stuff, but that's how she earns her living. And she was talking about what is success in the same way. So I was wondering if you could talk about what's great about doing that festival circuit and what it's done for you as an artist, not about money.
I think it's good to go into the film festival circuit not without a lot of huge expectations. And I know you talk about this in an earlier podcast. And you have to go in with the wanting to have that experience. And also, at the time, this is like pre-COVID, having the direct experience with audience members. One of the really great things that I discovered when I was in film festivals is people would see the movie, then they wanted to come up to you and tell their own stories. And it's amazing to have that kind of connection, and to know that you're encouraging people to tell their own stories, and to like reach into their past about something. I remember one woman told me, I remember a long time ago, I had these friends and we used to get together, and it's just incredible to get that sort of direct sort of gratification of connecting with other people on the film festival circuit, and to also do Q&As. And, it's just really enjoyable. I was really glad that I got to have that experience,
Yeah, especially now the way things are. I mean, big festivals are shutting down again. They're all online, which, is its own experience, and, makes it easier for people to attend, but it's not the same as being in person. I mean, even this right now, right? It's not the same if we're sitting at a diner chatting, right? It's just not. But hey, we'll get back there. But I just had COVID, actually, so I'm actually stuck. Yeah. I mean, I'm fine. It was very mild, but you still risk getting other people sick, so you're kind of hunkered down, and I'm getting stir crazy. So, in case you can't tell, but anyway, going back to this, so and what's great about film festivals is that you meet other filmmakers, people you might work with or you just become friends with who are supportive. It's great to just get that, let alone other things, right? And you're learning a lot and you're going on your journey, and now you're going ahead and making your own work, because obviously we all know raising money for another big film is time consuming. So you're just taking it in your own hands. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that, because that's what they tell a lot of actors, make your own work, right? But how do you do that on a small scale? How are you doing it on a small scale? It's different for everyone. And how do you make it so you can keep putting yourself out there, but you're not spending a lot of money and going broke trying to do something that you're not necessarily what you want to do? You want to be the actor.
This is a very small, sort of like very short film that I started with. And it was during probably the height of the pandemic that I started it, and I thought, well, what do I have to work with? I can't go out and do anything. What can I work with on my own, And truthfully, because I had recently gotten an agent at that point, and I was doing a lot of auditions, which I had to turn in myself, so I was buying equipment at this time that was affordable. I bought a Canon M50, which is actually an affordable, more high-end DSLR kind of camera. And I shot my short film on that. And it was just myself telling a story and about a gay man who had a son who, well, I don't want to give away all the information, who decides to take an unusual job for the summer and and how he was dealing with that. That's all. And I knew, and actually it was very helpful because before this, I was working on a feature that I was writing, and I had a million different characters, and it was just not working. And we had a couple of different readings, and actually several different readings, and I just couldn't make it work. And I had to put it aside. But I found that like working on something very small, where it was just one person, and I knew it was only going to be like a 10-minute story, it was very useful to me to go back to the basics.